Good evening, everybody. This is the meeting of the Municipal Safety Committee, and on the committee joining us tonight is Council Gould, Council Manning Martin, Council Melville, and Council Turco. Also in attendance is Council Rosignol, Council Charis, Council Neal, and Council McGinn. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that item is a letter/petition regarding making Bresnahan Street one-way from Washington Street to Parsons Street. At this time, I'd like to ask Captain Richards if he could come up and give us, I know he's been doing some background looking into the area. Maybe you can come up and share what you found out with the council. Thank you.
Captain Richards, Peabody Police. I'm here to talk about the Bresnahan Parsons Street issue. I was presented with a petition from a resident that wanted to turn Bresnahan Street into a one-way for various reasons. I'm not going to get into all the whole minutiae of it, but first of all, it's PHA property, so the police department and the council really don't have the authority to make any changes in there anyway. The PHA would have to do whatever takes place in there because I believe that they own it and they operate it, so get that out in the front. We don't make changes just to make changes. We looked at it. We looked at the issues that were in the letter that we got. And I can tell you that from a police department standpoint, whenever we get petitioned to put up a stop sign or anything else, we do a study, and usually it's a crash distribution study, and we look for reasons why we would want to make a change. And we did that. I went back and looked at the crash studies for motor vehicle crashes, pedestrian crashes, et cetera, in the area, and I didn't find any empirical data to suggest that a change is needed. That road's been like that for many, many years. There are some minor tweaks the PHA might be able to do to help things out, make parking on one side of the street and encourage residents to park behind the rec building that's in there, and a few other things to kind of help mitigate some of those things that were in that initial letter that we received. One thing I did note on the original letter that I received is not one resident of Parsons Street had signed off on that petition. And then we recently got another petition from, I think, all or most of the residents on Parsons Street that are against turning that into a one-way. So the position of the police department, at least right now, is the way that we look at it, is number one, we don't have the authority to make any changes, but number two, if we did, I wouldn't recommend any changes.
Thank you. Councilors, while Captain Richards is up here, anybody have any questions of Captain Richards? Council Turco.
Mr. President, move to receive late communication from the residents of Parsons Street.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? A vote? Anything else, Council Turco?
No, I think Captain Richards has addressed the issue. I don't think we as a council have the authority to make it a one-way as it stands. And honestly, I don't believe that I would. It's a 50% of the residents want it, 50% of the residents don't, and it's worked for how many years? I would stand to leave it as is.
Thank you. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although he's not on the committee, I'd like to defer to Ward Councilor McGinn just to give us what he thinks of the request. Please, if it's okay. Thank you.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I know that it's certainly at your discretion, but there's a couple of residents here this evening that I think would like to be heard on this, so
Thank you, Councilor. I'm open to that. I know that there are two petitions. There's one pro and there's one con. I'd like to ask if there is anybody in the audience who'd like to come up and speak. I think, probably one or two people from each side is probably all we need to hear. We understand the view, but if you'd like to come up. And I also like you to keep in mind what you heard tonight from from Captain Richards, is that it's not in the purview of the City Council. It's owned by the Peabody Housing Authority. And what that basically means is that the Peabody Housing Authority, they make a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes. We take care of the trash, the fire, and the police, but the Peabody Housing Authority would be responsible for plowing, landscaping, paving, things of that nature. So it's very important that you understand that it's the road is under the Peabody Housing Authority. With that being said, I'd like to ask anyone from the public if they'd like to come up and address the council. Absolutely. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and share what you'd like to share. Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Gino Deloisio. Okay. Gino Deloisio, I live at 16 Bresnahan Street for the past almost 5 years. Okay, and since I got there, I was starting to observe a lot of things that go on with the traffic there. And maybe people in the past have lived there for like 20, 30 years without too many incidents, but the burgeoning businesses in the area have changed all that exponentially, okay? First of all, it's a two-way street, and actually I have a whole bunch of pictures that I took here that I should have put into the original thing that shows how Bresnahan is like over twice the width of Parsons Street. Now, a lot of people come down starting at Bresnahan Street and they go around the corner and they are confronted with, and I put this one picture in with the packet that I put out, with a fork in the road, with a dead-end sign in the middle of the fork, with a not a throughway sign in the middle of the fork. And it reminds me of that Yogi Berra saying, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. Well, that's what a lot of people do. They just turn around and they go the other way. They don't think that it's either a throughway or a dead-end street. I asked them in the beginning to put arrows up, which would have simplified the problem in the beginning, and they decided to put a dead-end sign up there. And I just looked at it with awe. When I first looked at it, I couldn't believe. Sorry, the brainiac that did that. Anyway, okay, so that's first of all. It funnels down from Bresnahan Street, which has plenty of room for two-way traffic. Then it turns into Parsons Street, which only has room for one way unless you go through the obstacle course that the parking creates there, and I got pictures of that too. During the day, even today, all day today, there was a school, a minivan, like parked on the right side of Parsons. And at night, they're parked on both sides, and it's actually an obstacle course to get through. The parking turns from like 1 or 2 cars during the day to like 5, 6, 7 at night. And it is an obstacle course. I have myself been in buses. Some of the people, the drivers at the Peabody Senior Center are for me on this. They go around the corner after picking a lot of people up on that street, a lot of aged, very unwell people on that street that need ambulatory services all the time. And they go down the street and they pick up somebody, they go around the corner, and especially if it's during the morning rush hour or the evening rush hour, which is not just an hour, as you know, on Washington Street, you go on to Bresnahan, you can't get back out, and if you try to go out Parsons Street onto Washington Street and someone else is trying to come in, you have a Mexican standoff. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 cars behind each other, and the Mexican standoff turns into about a 20-minute ordeal. Try that with an ambulance with a person having a heart attack, okay? Or vice versa, or any other kind of thing. It's happened to me with a minor ambulatory thing, all right? I can't believe that has been allowed to go on all these years, with the number of sick people that live in the old age section of Bresnahan Street on top of it, okay? That's in there. And also, if they turn it into a one-way like I'm suggesting, starting at the top of Bresnahan and going around, it would smooth things out, because right now, people are coming around the corner at the end of Bresnahan, hitting that fork in the road, and they're looking for parking for all the new burgeoning businesses in the area. They don't know the area. They see the signs, they panic, they turn around and come back the other way, so it's twice the traffic on Bresnahan, going and coming. Every car that goes around the corner, I expect them to turn around and come back that way too. Just about every one of them. See what else. Like I said, it funnels down from 2 to 1. It's like, that doesn't make any sense in itself right there. The danger and all the other things. But as far as, just turning it would smooth the traffic out. Coming in from Bresnahan, it's a wide entrance. You go in one way, you go out the narrow way, and if you try to go back out of Bresnahan Street, even now, it's very dangerous now, especially with those new businesses. All the excess parking that's across the street on the left side on Washington Street blocks your view down the little hill that's on the left-hand side. And I see a lot of people at that crosswalk almost get in accidents pulling out of Bresnahan. Whereas if they just pulled out of Parsons around 100 yards up, well, 50 yards up the street, it would give a lot more focus to the person that's leaving the streets instead of having all those blockages to the left of cars parked on the left across from Kelly's new pub and stuff like that. I have they had 2 or 3 subjects, topics in favor of keeping it the same way. I have about 20. I listed about 10 on that, and there's more to come that I found since then. I could make a dissertation out of this, but I think you got the point. It is a dangerous situation that's accrued there. And some of the people on the other street have told me they've been like this for 30, 40 years. Why change it now? Well, things change. I'm sorry, you know. And that's all it's all about. Resistance to change is pain. That's all I can say, you know, so.
Thank you.
All right.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
And there's plenty more. If you want to ask questions, go ahead.
I think we're all set. Thank you.
And I got some extra pictures here if you want to pass this around. This is something I took a little bit too late, but I put them all in order as when you start on Bresnahan, and each one is geographically.
Can I have a motion to receive?
Received that. And there's a little information about each one as you go down the street and turn around, you'll see what you encounter each time you go down there.
Thank you. And if you want to just pass those around, starting with Council Gravel, Mr. Spanos, that'd be great. Council Melville, you had a question, I believe? I'm sorry. Okay. Just wanted the pictures. Anybody else from the public that'd like the opportunity to speak pro or con on the proposal? State your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Mary Beth Malia from 27 Parsons Street. So I was the one that went around and got the other petition for the residents of Parsons. Naturally, they didn't all sign it because I didn't get them all, but afterwards they called me when they got the notice. It's ridiculous to make Parsons a one-way. First of all, it is a small street. Residents deal with it. We pull over when someone's coming out, coming in, whichever way we have to. There is no parking on one side, which I think I put in my petition. There are suggestions, and he does have a good point, where Bresnahan has no parking on one side only. They park on both. So naturally, their emergency vehicles can't get down there if they have to. So there are other ways besides making one-ways. If he's talking about the crosswalk that's in front of the Bresnahan and Kelly's Pub, maybe look at removing it and putting it in a different location. The intersection where he does have the telephone pole with the dead end, that needs to be looked at. I agree totally. All we need is a little Parson Street to the left, dead end underneath it, and you should be all set. These are just suggestions from me, and but totally not to make it a one-way, and I empathize with him, but those are just suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to speak?
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yep, Councilman.
motion to receive late communication from the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, Emory Burns. So moved, please.
The motion, all in favor? Any opposed to vote? I just had one quick question. Council McGinn, I just wanted clarification. Is Bresnahan parking on both sides or one side of the street? Do you know?
Mr. Chairman, it's, again, that doesn't fall under the ordinances of the city, so that's not controlled by the city ordinances. However, I believe under the Housing Authority rules, it's intended to be parking on one side.
Okay, thank you.
It's the extent to which that's enforced, I think, is an issue, but I believe it's technically parking on one side.
Okay. Yes, the director, Ms. Bujeticas, can you state come up to the microphone? State your name and address for the record, please.
Emory Burns, Executive Director of Peabody Housing Authority. I just want to clarify that as far as the parking on one side of Bresnahan, we request that the residents do that during the winter, during the storms. However, that is one of the options that we're looking at to put in place permanently in order to relieve some of the concerns that the residents at Bresnahan have as far as fire engines and ambulances not being able to fit down. So I won't go into my communication that was accepted. You can review that later, but I will just state for the record that the Housing Authority would be against this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I thank Mr. Deloisio and Ms. Malia for making their opinions known on this and representing the neighborhood. The hazardous conditions that are suggested in the petition, what we're hearing from the police is that the police department does not have vehicular or pedestrian accident data to support that hazardous condition. So we've got a police department recommendation against this. We've got a housing authority recommendation against making the change. We've got a confirmation that that it really doesn't fall under the purview of the council in the first place because it's not a city street. That's come to light recently, and I know the city clerk confirmed that it is not on the list of accepted streets. We've got Parsons Street's residents that are opposed to that, not only those that signed the petition, but many who have contacted me subsequent to the petition being filed. So my suggestion here to the committee would be, I think all do agree that the intersection of Parson and Bresnahan does require some closer evaluation. That we did look at that a couple of years ago at the request of Mr. Deloisio, but I think that the signage that was put in place at that time did not have the desired effect. So the suggestion would be a motion to that the DPS and police departments reevaluate the signage at the intersection of Parson and Bresnahan Street, and that other than that, otherwise recommend taking no action on the change request. And those would be my inputs, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, on Councilor McGinn's motion, so moved.
You've heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Can we have a vote on the motion, please, of the committee, subcommittee? A roll call vote, please.
Councilors Gould.
Just clarification, Mr. Chairman. The motion is to keep it as is?
The motion was to DPS and police department evaluate the signage and no other action taken.
Yes.
That's the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
To adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
It's a vote. Motion, meeting adjourned.